Welcome back, everyone, to my channel. I'm Annette, also known as Grandma D. Tonight, we are on Chapter 3 of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Now, this is a very interesting book written by Mark Twain. It is a classic story, and if you would like to read along with me and enjoy your own book of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, I am a Thrift Books affiliate, and you can use my link through the notes below and obtain a copy for yourself if you would like using my link. It's no extra cost to you, and all thrift books are gently used, perfectly fine books. That's where I got this from. Or it is available on Amazon, and I am also an Amazon affiliate, and I will drop that link for you as well in the notes below. So without any further ado, we will get started and read Chapter 3. There we go. Chapter 3. My bookmark was in the way. Now, if you recall, when we read Chapter 2, Tom was instructed to whitewash the fence, and he didn't want to do that. And he was trying to enlist some of the other boys to help him whitewash the fence. And he discovered that you can get someone to do just about anything if you use the right words, which is pretty interesting if you think about it. Chapter 2 was Strong Temptations, Strategic Movement, The Innocents Beguiled. Now we are going to see what happens next in Tom's exciting adventures. Chapter 3, Tom as a General, Triumph and Reward, Dismal Felicity, Commission and Omission. This sounds very interesting. So without any further ado, we will get right into it. Tom presented himself before Aunt Polly, who was sitting by an open window in a pleasant Reward apartment, which was bedroom, breakfast room, dining room, and library combined. The balmy summer air, the restful quiet odor of the flowers, and the drowsy murmur of the bees had had their effect, and she was nodding over her knitting, for she had no company but the cat, and it was asleep in her lap. Her spectacles were propped up on her gray head for safety. She had thought that, of course, Tom had deserted long ago, and she wondered at seeing him place himself in her power again in this intrepid way. He said, "Mayn't I go and play now, Aunt?" "What's a-ready? How much have you done?" "It's all done, Aunt." "Tom, don't lie to me. I can't bear it." "I ain't, Aunt. It's all is done." Aunt Polly placed small trust in such evidence. She went out to see for herself, and she would have been content to find 20% of Tom's statement true. When she found the entire fence whitewashed, and not only whitewashed, but elaborately coated and recoated, and even a streak added to the ground, her astonishment was almost unspeakable. She said, "Well, I never! There's no getting round it. You can work, and when you're a mind to, Tom." And then she diluted the compliment by adding, "But it's powerful seldom you're a mind to, I'm bound to say. Well, go along and play, but mind you get back sometime in a week, or I'll tan you." She was so overcome by the splendor of his achievement that she took him into the closet and selected a choice apple and delivered it to him, along with an improving lecture upon the added value and flavor a treat took to itself when it came without sin through virtuous effect. And while she closed with a happy scriptural flourish, he hooked a donut. Then he skipped out and saw Sid just starting up the outer stairway that led into the back rooms on the second floor. Clods were handy, and the air was full of them in a twinkling. They raged round Sid like a hailstorm. And before Aunt Polly could collect her surprised facilities and sally to the rescue, 6 or 7 clods had taken personal effect, and Tom was over the fence and gone. There was a gate, but as a general thing, he was too crowded for time to make use of it. His soul was at peace, now that he had settled with Sid for calling attention to his black thread and getting him into trouble. Tom skirted the block and came round into a muddy alley that led by the back of his aunt's cow stable. He presently got safely beyond the reach of capture and punishment, and hastened toward the public square of the village where 2 military companies of boys had met for conflict, according to previous appointment. Tom was general of one of these armies, Joe Harper, a bosom friend, general of the other. These 2 great commanders did not condescend to fight in person, that being suited to the still smaller fry, but sat together on an eminence and conducted the field operations by orders delivered through aides de camp. Tom's army won a great victory after a long and hard-fought battle. Then the dead were counted, prisoners exchanged, the terms for the next disagreement agreed upon. There's a picture. And the boys are fighting, and there's Tom and his friend directing and giving orders. And the day for the necessary battle appointed, after which the armies fell into line, marched away, Tom turned homeward alone. As he was passing by the house where Jeff Thatcher lived, he saw a new girl in the garden. A lovely little blue-eyed creature with yellow hair plaited into 2 long tails, white summer frock, and embroidered pantalettes. The fresh-crowned hero fell without firing a shot. A certain Army Lawrence vanished out of his heart and left not even a memory of herself behind. He had thought he loved her to distraction. He had regarded his passion as adoration, and behold, it was only a poor little exuberant partiality. He had been months winning her. She had confessed hardly a week ago. He had been the happiest and proudest boy in the world only 7 short days. And here, in one instant of time, she had gone out of his heart like a casual stranger whose visit is done. He worshipped this new angel with futile eyes till he saw that she had discovered him. Then he pretended he did not know she was present and began to show off in all sorts of absurd boyish ways in order to win her admiration. He kept up this grotesque foolishness for some time, but by and by, while he was in the midst of some dangerous gymnastic performances, he glanced aside and saw that the little girl was wending her way towards the house. Tom came up to the fence and leaned on it, grieving and hoping she would tarry yet a while longer. She halted a moment on the steps and then moved towards the door. Tom heaved a great sigh as she put her foot on the threshold, but his face lit up right away, for she tossed a pansy over the fence a moment before she disappeared. The boy ran around and stopped within a foot or 2 of the flower, and then shaded his eyes with his hands and began to look down the street as if he had discovered something of interest going in that direction. Presently, he picked up a straw and began trying to balance it on his nose with his head tilted far back. And as he moved from side to side his efforts, he edged nearer and nearer toward the pansy. Finally, his bare foot rested upon it. His pale toes closed upon it, and he hopped away with the treasure and disappeared round the corner. But only for a minute, only while he could button the flower inside his jacket, next his heart, or next his stomach, possibly, for he was not much posted in anatomy and not hypocritical anyway. He returned now and hung about the fence till nightfall, showing off as before, but the girl never exhibited herself again, though Tom comforted himself a little with the hope that she had been near somehow, meantime, and been aware of his attentions. Finally, he went home reluctantly with his poor head full of visions. Although all through supper his spirits were so high that his aunt wondered what has gotten into this child. He took a good scolding about clodding Sid and did not seem to mind it in the least. He tried to steal sugar under his aunt's very nose and got his knuckles rapped for it. He said, "Aunt, why don't you ever whack Sid when he takes it?" "Well, Sid don't torment a body the way you do. You'd be always into sugar if I wasn't watching you." Presently she stepped into the kitchen, and Sid, happy in his immunity, reached for the sugar bowl, a sort of glorying over Tom which was well nigh unbearable. But Sid's fingers slipped and the bowl dropped and broke. Tom was in such ecstasies that even he controlled his tongue and was silent. He said to himself that he would not speak a word, even when his aunt came in, but would sit perfectly still when she asked who did the mischief, and then he would tell, and there would be nothing so good in the world as to see that pet model catch it. He was so brimful of exultation that he could hardly hold himself when the old lady came back and stood above the wreck, discharged lightnings of wrath from over her spectacles. He said to himself, "Now it's coming," and in the next instant he was sprawling on the floor. The potent palm was uplifted to strike again when Tom cried out, "Hold on now! What are you belting me for? Sid broke it." Aunt Polly paused, perplexed, and Tom looked for the healing pity. But when she got her tongue again and only said, "Oomph, well, you didn't get a lick amiss, I reckon. You'd been up in some other audacious mischief when I wasn't around, like enough." Then her conscience reproached her, and she yearned to say something kind and loving, but she judged that this would be constructed into a confession that she had been in the wrong, and discipline forbade that. She kept silence and went about her affairs with troubled heart. Tom sulking in a corner and exalted his woes. He knew that in her heart his aunt was on her knees to him, and he was morsely gratified by the consciousness of it. He would hang out no signals. He would take notice of none. He knew that yearning's glance fell upon him now and then through a film of tears, but he refused recognition of it. He pictured himself lying sick unto death, and his aunt bending over him beseechingly. One little forgiving word, but he would turn his face to the wall and die with that word unsaid. Ah, how would she feel then? And he pictured himself brought home from the river, dead with his curls all wet and his sore heart at rest. How would she throw herself upon him, and how her tears would fall like rain, and her lips pray God to give her back her boy, and she would never, never abuse him any more. But he would lie there cold and white and make no sign. Poor little sufferer, his grief's at an end. He so worked upon his feelings with the pathos of these dreams that he had to keep swallowing, for he was so like to choke, and his eyes swam in a blur of water, which overflowed when he blinked and ran down, trickled from the end of his nose. And such a luxury to him was this petting of his sorrows that he could not bear to have any worldly cheeriness or any grating delight intrude upon it. It was too sacred for such contact. And so presently, when his cousin Mary danced in, all alive with the joy of seeing home again after an age-long visit of 1 week to the country, he got up and moved in clouds and darkness out the door as she brought song and sunshine in the other. He wandered far from the accustomed haunts of the boys and sought desolate places that were in harmony with his spirit. A log raft in the river invited him, and he seated himself on its outer edge and contemplated the dreary vastness of stream, wishing the while that he could only be drowned all at once and unconsciously without undergoing the uncomfortable routine devised by nature. Then he thought of his flower. He got it out, rumpled and wilted, and it mighty increased his dismal felicity. He wondered if she would pity him if she knew. Would she cry and wish that she had a right to put her arms around his neck and comfort him? Or would she turn coldly away, like all the hollow world? This picture brought such an agony of pleasurable sufferings that he worked it over and over again in his mind and set it up in new and varied lights, till he wore it threadbare, and at last he rose up sighing and departed into the darkness. About 9:30 or 10 o'clock, he came along the deserted street to where the adorned unknown lived. He paused a moment. No sound fell upon his listening ear. A candle was casting a dull glow upon the curtain of a second-story window. Was the sacred presence there? He climbed the fence, threaded his stealthy way through the plants, till he stood underneath the window. He looked up at it long with emotion, and then he laid him down on the ground under it, disposing himself upon his back, with his hands clasped upon his breast and holding his poor wilted flower. Thus he would die out in the cold world, with no shelter over his homeless head, no friendly hand to wipe the death damps from his brow, no loving face to bend pityingly over him when the great agony came. And thus she would see him when she looked out upon the glad morning, and oh, and would she drop one little tear upon his poor lifeless form? Would she heave one little sigh to see a bright young life so rudely blighted, so untimely cut down? The window went up. A maid servant's discordant voice profaned the holy calm, and a deluge of water drenched the poor martyr's remains. The strangling hero sprang up with a relieving snort. There was a whiz as of a missile in the air, mingled with the murmur, of course, of a curse. A sound of a shivering glass followed, and a small, vague form went over the fence and shot away in the gloom. Not long after, as Tom, all undressed for bed, was surveying his drenched garments by the light of a tallow dip, Sid woke up, but if he had any dim idea of making any references to illusions, he thought better of it and held his peace, for there was danger in Tom's eye. Tom turned in without added vexation of prayers, and Sid made mental note of the omission. Wow. That is so interesting. Tom has quite the imagination. And a lot of self-pity as well. He was pretty hurt that his aunt didn't come to his rescue and assumed that he broke the sugar bowl. And it sounds like he spent the better of a couple of hours wallowing in self-pity. Very interesting. So he was a general. He had his triumph and reward, dismal felicity, commission, and the omission of his prayers. Wow, that's exciting. Well, we will look forward to chapter 4 for next time. Mental acrobatics, attending Sunday school, the superintendent showing off, Tom lionized. That sounds super interesting to me. And I hope that you enjoyed listening to chapter 3. And as I have said before, the language they use in this book, when it was written, can be hard to read. But it's so interesting. I was so caught up in Tom's wallowing in his self-pity and how sad he was and how they would miss him if he was gone. Ah, little boys. Well, I hope you'll join me next time as we read chapter 4 of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. And again, if you would like to have this book for yourself, it's available on Thrift Books and Amazon. And you will find links to that in the notes below the video. So this is Annette, also known as Grandma D, saying, I hope you have a wonderful night tonight and a better day tomorrow. Get outside, get some exercise, get some fresh air, and subscribe to my channel. Like this video and click the notification bell so that you will be sure and not miss chapter 4 of The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. So we'll be back next time and continue the story. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye for now.